HoloNetAudio.com.
A long time ago.
You mean right now?
This is not logical.
You're listening to Dark Empire Radio, a podcast with news and discussion from the Star Wars and Star Trek fan communities, and more. Welcome back to Dark Empire Radio. I'm Joe, the Brutal One, and this, of course, being a podcast for Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans, this particular episode is for all of you out there that enjoyed the original Star Trek series way back when and just wanted more of it. It was gone way too soon, only to be replayed in syndication until about 2012, when Star Trek Continues appeared, and we're going to dive into that and why I love that fan-produced web series so much.
Intriguing.
My guest this time around is not only a huge Star Trek fan, he is no stranger to fan productions, wearing costumes and even sitting in the captain's chair. He is Captain Kirk in the award-winning and my favorite, dare I say, web series, Star Trek Continues. Welcome, Vic Mignogna, to Dark Empire Radio. How are you?
Well, buongiorno, signore. I had to start it that way because I saw your last name and I'm like, this guy has got to be a fellow Italian.
I am indeed. We have a very similar last name, don't we?
Yeah. Do you pronounce it Mignono?
Mignano, or Mignano, yeah. I like to tell people, think of a filet mignon and a donut at the end. Yeah, Mignano.
Oh, yeah. I've had to explain that to many people in my life. It's a pleasure to join you, Joe. It's a pleasure to join you. And thank you for the kind words. Star Trek Continues. You are right. That I've been in a Star Trek fan and in the fan production world for a while, and then back in 2013 decided to do my own thing as best I could and created and executive produced Star Trek Continues, and I am overwhelmed and humbled that we are fast approaching 22 million views.
Amazing. Well, I have long said that, in my opinion at least, Star Trek Continues perfectly bridges the gap between the original series and the motion picture. And you were more than just Captain Kirk on that show, as you mentioned, a producer, a writer. What were your contributions overall to Continues, and what was the impetus for...
my goodness, Joe, how long is your show?
I suppose we could go on for quite a while, but
I am not kidding. If you're genuinely asking that question, the genuine answer is I had my hand in every element of production, and I'm not exaggerating. I created the show, first of all. It was my brainchild. It was my idea. I chose all the people on the crew. I cast every character. But that's before there was ever anything shot, right? I subsidized having the sets built. I worked with Matt Busey, my director of photography, to draw up the floor plans, to build all the sets. I went down probably 7 or 8 times myself. Flew down to Kingsland, Georgia, and actually helped build the sets, paint, nail, sand, all of that. The first episode, many of the episodes were my story ideas. Some of them I directed. All of them I edited and script edited, and then edited the footage. Down to, choosing fabrics for costumes and approving designs for original props. And my hand was in every element of this production. This was my baby in every sense of the word.
My goodness. Well, that is dedication. What was the impetus, really, for, albeit unofficially, completing Kirk's original 5-year mission? Is it just something you wanted to do, or is there more to it?
Well, no, I'll tell you the truth. You may or may not know that I've done a lot of voice acting in my life. I've been a voice actor for 25 years. I've done over 400 different animated series and video games. And I had done so many over the years and had the privilege to be involved in so many popular productions that I actually had a fan club for several years. And the woman that ran the fan club called me one day back in around 2000, gosh, I don't even know, 2009, maybe 2010, and said, no, maybe 2008, and said, hey, you're a big Star Trek fan when you were little, weren't you? And I said, yeah. And she said, there are these guys online and they rebuilt some of the sets and they make fan Star Trek episodes. And I thought, wow, really? And so I looked them up and I went and I looked up a contact email. I sent them a message and they wrote me back, and they recognized that I had done a lot of work and had a bit of visibility in my industry. And they said, we'd love to have you come in. Would you like to play a role in one of our episodes? So I went to play a role in an episode of theirs, and I immediately, and this is not a slight, this is just reality. I went there, and one of the first things I noticed was that they weren't very well organized. They meant well, and they were all fans, and they were nice people, but they, the camera guy didn't know what he was doing. The lighting guys didn't know what they were doing. Nobody knew their lines. You know what I mean? It was just, at a very low level of production value. And my college degree was in film. I had worked professionally in writing, directing, editing, acting. And so I walked away from that experience thinking, man, this could be done so much better. If there was somebody at the helm that kind of, knew how to direct actors, knew how to get a good performance out of actors, knew how to set up a camera shot, knew how to light it, and knew how to write and tell a compelling story, and knew how to bring other people in who were talented artists, whether it was camera or sound or lighting or makeup or wardrobe. And so then I was asked to direct an episode for yet another Star Trek fan production. And I did it, and I enjoyed it, and I made friends with those guys, but I once again walked away thinking, man, this could be done so much better. So I decided in about 2012 that I was going to put my money where my mouth was, and I was going to rent a building and get a bunch of volunteers together, and I would send them money, and we would draw up floor plans, and we would rebuild the original soundstage to the best of our ability. And then I would make an episode as close as I could come to the Star Trek that I loved, remembered and loved as a child, as a little boy. So I came up with a story that was a sequel to an original series episode about the Greek god Apollo. Mm-hmm. And I made contact with Mike Forrest, who played that role in the original series. And we met at a deli in Burbank, and I pitched him the idea, and he agreed to do it. I cast the rest of the characters. I crewed the rest of the crew. And we all converged down in Kingsland, Georgia. And I spent the money to fly people down. I spent the money to put them in hotels. I spent the money to feed them every day and rent the camera gear. And we made Pilgrim of Eternity. I edited the episode, sound, music, edited the episode, had my dear friend Ralph Miller, who was our sound guy, sound design it. And we released it to the world, not really knowing whether anyone would like it, but it was very well received. And so we decided to launch a crowdfunding campaign to make more episodes. And the rest of the story is that we raised enough money to make 11 full-length episodes. And the plan was to pick up where the original series was left off abruptly, where it was abruptly canceled, finish the 5-year mission, return the Enterprise to Earth, and leave everyone right where they were when the motion picture begins. And I'm very, very grateful to everyone involved and the fans that have enjoyed it to say that that's exactly what we were able to accomplish.
So the first episode really came out of your own pocket. It was funded by yourself, and then the rest was crowdfunded. Well, one of the things I love most about Continues, in addition to the way it was so lovingly and professionally filmed in homage to the original series, were the many celebrity guests, in addition to just Michael Forrest's celebrity guest appearances and cameos. I'd like to ask you a little bit about some of them. We could talk about them all day, but we could.
Sure. And you know what? Before we move into that, I would be remiss in not mentioning there was a gentleman named Stephen Dengler who was a co-executive producer with me. I had met Stephen on another fan production, and I told him about my idea of making Star Trek Continues, and he agreed to help out financially. So while it is absolutely true that I bore the lion's share of the financial burden in getting the series off the ground, Stephen did contribute and assist, and I would be remiss not to mention that. So
great. And I remember seeing him in the credits as well.
Yes, and he actually played our security chief Drake in the series as well. He wanted to play an on-camera role, and so we created a character for him, and he did a wonderful job, and it was a real honor to work with him and become good friends with him.
Great. Nice to learn a little bit more about him then. I've always wondered about that character, if he was something intentionally put in for a reason. Well, now I know. Well, you and I have a mutual acquaintance, I do believe, in Daniel Logan. I know his dad John pretty well.
Daniel, yes.
Yeah. And he portrayed young Boba Fett, of course, in Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Seeing Daniel appear in the episode Lolani as Ensign Tangaroa at the Navigator Station, that was a pleasant surprise for me. And the blooper reel for that episode, by the way, is hysterical, where he says transferred from the hood. That's typical Daniel. That's how he talks. Well, how did Ensign Tangaroa really become part of the Enterprise crew?
Well, I will tell you, Joe, he became a part of it in the same way virtually all of our celebrity guest stars became a part of it. Because of my voice acting career, I had been invited over the years. I was a guest, an autograph signing guest at many, many, many Comic-Cons around the world. So here I am doing Comic-Cons with the likes of Christopher Lloyd and David Prowse and Aaron Gray and Lou Ferrigno and Colin Baker and John Delancey and Brent Spiner and Michael, Michael Dorn and Marina Sirtis, and the list is long. Dozens and dozens and dozens. Bill Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, George Takei, Walter Koenig, people, Gigi Edgley, people from all different TV shows. And we would become friends because we were all signing guests at these conventions. And after becoming friends with them and exchanging, cell numbers, as we would create an episode, as we would write a new episode, I would start thinking, okay, we have this character in this episode that no one knows. It's a new character. It's an original character. Who could I get? Who do I know that would play this character well? And I would reach out to someone like John Delancey or Lou Ferrigno and then Daniel Logan and I had become good friends doing a lot of events together. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have Daniel come and do a cameo? Star Wars meets Star Trek, as it were. And he was more than happy to do it. And he flew down, and the day that we were shooting on the bridge, we put him in that station and had a great time. He is an awesome guy. I've known him for many years now. I met him when he was probably still in his teens, doing appearances at Comic-Cons, and so it was really neat to have him come aboard for that episode.
And speaking of Lou Ferrigno, I remember on Star Trek Enterprise when professional wrestler Paul White, a.k.a. The Big Show, he portrayed a male Orion. So I take it you wanted the Hulk to play a similar part on Continued.
You know, it's funny you should mention that. Lou Ferrigno actually became a very dear friend from doing events. And it was actually Lou, he and I were at a convention, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Salt Lake Comic-Con years ago. And it was the end of a day of signing, and he and I were both down in the lounge having a glass of wine. And Lou said, "What are you up to these days, Vic?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on a Star Trek production." And I pulled out some pictures, and I showed him some images of the sets. And Lou said to me, "Oh my gosh, I was such a big Star Trek fan when I was a boy. I would really love to get an opportunity to play a role in your show." And I thought to myself, okay, Lou, you're 6'7", you know what I mean? And how in the world, I mean, he's this big, pardon the pun, hulking guy. How in the world, you can't just put him in a uniform. You know what I mean? Like he would stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm thinking, how in the world, what could I possibly have him do? It would be really fun to have him do something, but what could I have him do? Well, we were in the midst of writing Lolani. And Joe, if I were to show you the original screenplay of Lolani, there was no character named Zamenhof in that show, in that script. After I came home from that convention with him, meeting Lou and not meeting him, but talking to him about his love of Star Trek, I thought, now wait a minute, we're writing a story about a green Orion slave girl who stows away on the Enterprise. What if we added a character to the story who comes out after her and claims that she's his property? And I thought, oh my goodness, he would make a perfect, big, muscular, menacing Orion slave trader and be green again. So I pitched the idea to him and he said, "Do I have to be green?" And I'm like, well, you kind of have to be, you kind of do, Lou, because the race of beings is green. He said, "Don't make me look like the Hulk." And I said, "I promise you, bro, you're going to be bald. You're going to have a Fu Manchu mustache with beads on it. Like you're going to be a badass looking dude." And so he agreed. He came down to the studio, did a fantastic job. And that's how he got to be involved in the series.
Well, there are so many celebs that make appearances like we were talking about. We could go on all day, but I want to bring up one more. And this one is a recurring character. Hands down, my favorite Star Trek character of all time is Scotty. I have cosplayed as him, and Jimmy Doohan's real-life story inspires me a great deal to this day. His son, Chris, played the role of Scotty on Continues, I think, to perfection. Now, was it the plan to have Chris Doohan portray Mr. Scott from the very beginning?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I reached out to him by social media. And we met for lunch and seemed like a really, really great guy. And I told him what we were planning. And you know what's funny about Chris is he told me, "I'm not an actor, just so you know, Vic." "I'm not an actor." And I said, "Well, you know what? I mean, I'm going to roll the dice here, Chris, because it would be such a neat thing to have you in this role." And, Chris, I think, has gone on record with a lot of interviews to say that he was not super close to his dad. His dad worked very hard. He was very busy providing for the family. And Chris didn't really feel as close to his dad as he might have liked. And this opportunity, I think Chris took this opportunity to create a closeness to his dad. Does that make sense?
Oh, it most certainly does. And I can tell you why. But go ahead. Yeah. To feel like
he was having a connection. And I'll tell you a story. I've told it before, but it bears repeating. Chris and I were in the turbo lift on the bridge set, waiting to enter the bridge for the very first shot of Pilgrim of Eternity. This was literally the first time we were shooting on the bridge, in our uniforms, first episode. And he and I were standing in the turbo lift because if you remember in the opening scene, Spock's in command and Kirk and Scotty enter from the turbo lift and they have a conversation about these fueling stations that are being depleted and they don't know why. And Chris and I were standing in the turbo lift waiting for somebody outside to call action. And we looked at each other and I said, "Can you believe we're doing this?" And he looked at me and he said, "I want to remember this moment forever." He said, "I'm wearing the uniform my dad wore. And when these doors open, I'm going to walk to the station that my dad walked to hundreds of times 50 years ago." I mean, it was surreal. And I think Chris knew that. And he told me many times that his family was very, very, very proud that he was doing this, that his family was very, very happy that he was doing this. And, after the first episode, he called me and he said, "Listen, I know that you had to work harder with me to get a performance out of me that you needed. And if you want to recast my role, I would understand." And I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "It's in your blood, Chris." I said, "I know you said you're not an actor." I said, "But I feel like you have the same gift your dad had. And I am not at all interested in recasting." And he said, "Okay, I just want you there whenever I'm acting. Whenever I'm doing a scene, I want to make sure you're there because I want to make sure you get out of me, what you're looking for." And he just got better and better and better. And I think he paid his dad a tremendous tribute in this role.
Well, I understand the need for the connection, and I agree with you. I'm glad that you kept him on, and rightfully so. Growing up, my dad and I were never incredibly close either, but one of the few things we did was watch Star Trek together. Now, Next Generation came out when I was in high school, so when I was younger than that, all we had was the original series and the movies. And my dad, initially he was a race car driver and he worked in a hospital when he wasn't racing, and I hardly ever saw him. But one of the few things that we did, was watch Star Trek. And I don't know if he just put up with my being there, but I think he genuinely really did enjoy Trek. And I think there was a little bit of enjoyment of him passing that on to me. My dad's he's a physics nut. And we know that scientists love Star Trek.
Yes.
So I have those memories of my dad and I watching Trek together, so I can empathize with Chris Doohan's need for that connection very much so. Well, I noted in the first two episodes, Dr. Trek himself, Larry Nemeczek, portrayed Dr. McCoy, but that changed in the third episode onwards, with Chuck Huber taking on the role of Bones. Why the casting change?
Well, if you go back before the first episode, Joe, have you seen the 3 vignettes that we made?
Yes, and he's there too.
Who was Dr. McCoy?
That was Chuck Huber, I believe.
Exactly. Chuck Huber was always meant to be Dr. McCoy. When I first created the series, I asked Chuck to play Dr. McCoy, and he agreed. And we shot the little vignettes that we shot, and he was Dr. McCoy. 1 month before we were supposed to shoot, Chuck called me because he had a family medical emergency, and he was not going to be able to do the shoot. And I thought to myself, I can't believe this. I can't even get the first episode. You know what I mean? Here I am. I haven't even shot the first frame of the first episode, and I'm already
understand the frustration.
I'm already struggling with attrition. Because I will tell you something that any fan production person will tell you. It's very hard to get people to commit. If it's just a volunteer thing and they're taking time away from their family and their work and traveling and all of that, it's hard to get them to agree. And it's hard to get them to agree once. It's highly unlikely you'll get them to agree twice. And they certainly aren't going to do it a third time. So having said that, Joe, the fact that I can count on one hand the number of people that we lost in Star Trek Continues, and the only one was that first episode. On-screen person was their first 2 episodes. The other people that we lost were production people that, for whatever reason, weren't able to continue. But with just those few exceptions, we had the same 35 or 40 people every episode for 11 episodes. And anyone who's ever done a fan film will tell you that's unheard of.
It's a labor of love. A labor of love.
Not,
it's because
not
they love
that,
doing it.
I mean, but not exactly. But it's got to be more than that. It's got to be something you feel proud to be a part of. You got to like the people you're working with. You got to feel like it's something of value you're contributing to. You know what I mean? It's gotta really grab you to get you to commit for 8 or 10 days twice a year to go to this tiny little town in South Georgia and shoot a Star Trek episode. So I'm very, very, very proud of our production cast and crew for the way that they stuck with this production. But back to your question, Chuck Huber was always intended to be Dr. McCoy. And when he had this emergency come up, I thought, my goodness, what am I going to do? And around that time, we had already released the vignettes, by the way, so they were out there, right? And around that time, I went to see Bill Shatner's one-man show at the Pantages in Hollywood. I was living in LA at the time. And Larry Nemeczek, who I didn't really know at the time, was sitting behind me at the Pantages, at the performance. And when the performance ended, he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "You're Vic, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Larry Nemeczek," he introduced himself. And he said, "I love the vignettes you released." And I'm like, thank you so much. And he said something. We were walking outside, and I'll never forget it. We were standing on the sidewalk in front of the Pantages, and Larry said to me, "Well, if you ever need anything, I love McCoy the way you love Kirk." And I thought, okay, God, I hear you. I think maybe you're sending this opportunity my way. And so I said, well, Larry, it's funny you should say that because our Dr. McCoy has had a conflict. And would you be willing? Do you have any acting experience? That was the first thing I asked him. Because you know what, Joe? A lot of these fan films suffer from one big glaring issue, and that is that while they're nice people and they mean well and they're big fans, they're not actors.
Right.
They're not good actors. And it's not personal. People get so easily offended. It's not personal. It's just a fact. You know, if you were to say to me, Vic, you're not a very good basketball player, I wouldn't want to fight you because I know I'm not. And I can, you know what I mean? And I'm comfortable with acknowledging what my strong suits are and what they are not.
You have the talent and you have the training.
Right. And if you don't, you say, you know what, this is not really something I'm great at, but whatever. So I knew that was a big problem with fan productions. Many of them are unwatchable because they are so amateurly acted and put together. And so I determined from the very beginning with Star Trek Continues, we are going to tell compelling, thought-provoking, thematic stories like the original series did. And in order to do that, we need actors, not fans, actors. Fans, yes, but actors first. So
I agree.
So when I said to Larry, have you done any acting? Larry said, yes, I have. And I said, well, if you're interested in doing this, I'd love for you to come play McCoy. So he came down and he played Dr. McCoy in the first episode and in the second episode. But partway through the second episode, Chuck Huber reached out to me and he said, hey, Vic, medical crisis averted. And if I have to sweep floors, I want to be a part of your production. So I met Larry for lunch one day in Burbank, and I said, hey, Larry, love you, man. So grateful for you stepping in. You'll never know how much that means to me. But I always intended Chuck Huber to be McCoy. And I'd like him to step back into that role. And I'll tell you what, to his credit, Larry was incredibly gracious. He could have been like a petulant child, which you see all too often in that kind of situation, and stormed off and flamed me on social media and what a lot of people tend to do. But he didn't. He said, I totally understand. And then he said, would it be okay if I come to the shoots anyway? And I said, you know what, Larry? You have forgotten more about Star Trek than most people will ever know. I would love for you to be our creative consultant. I would be happy for you to come to the shoots, because by this time, after the first two episodes, he'd made friends with a lot of the people on the cast and crew. And we all loved Larry. It was not a personal decision. It was a, professional decision to change the role out and bring Chuck back. But so I said, you are more than welcome to come, and we would love to have you there as a consultant. So every episode after that, Larry was there, and he was walking around shooting video. He was interviewing people. We would say, hey, Larry, what was this thing called? Or how would you describe such and such? Or, and we would go to him for his expertise occasionally on different things. And he remained with the production, even though he wasn't playing McCoy anymore.
Well, to the production's benefit, I think, Continues as an award-winning web series. What awards did it get ultimately?
Goodness. I'm looking at half a dozen right now. I can't even remember all of them. It won Webby Awards. It won Geeky Awards. It won, my goodness, different sci-fi awards. Certainly won plenty of fan film awards.
Well, Continues,
a lot.
It got away with a lot of things that fan films just seemingly can't do anymore, thanks in no small part to the fan film guidelines handed down by Paramount about a decade ago. And I think that really puts limits on Trek fan productions. Now, those guidelines came down while Continues was still in production, if I remember right. Were there any issues getting those final episodes completed despite the corporate crackdown?
Yeah, let me tell you, it's well documented, but let me tell you what happened. We were around episode 7, and there was another person in the fan community, and I would appreciate it if you don't mention his name and don't mention his production.
Okay.
But he wanted to make a Star Trek feature film starring himself. Had no acting experience, had no production experience, but he wanted to do this. And in fact, he had been wanting to do this for a long time. I knew he had wanted to do this 5 or 6 years earlier. And he started crowdfunding and raised a lot of money, and then didn't make what he raised the money for. He was able to bring in a lot of names from different productions, different well-known sci-fi productions and stuff. But he raised a lot of money, and then there was a lot of question as to where the money had gone and was going, because there was no production. We're talking about over 1 million. Some people have estimated 2 million in donations, and selling product which you are expressly forbidden to do, and yet not making the thing that you raised the money to make. So CBS basically said, you know what? Enough is enough. We've been letting these fans play in our sandbox for all these years under the expressly forbidden rule that you cannot profit from our IP. And they felt that this other production had crossed that line, and so they filed the lawsuit. Now, here's what a lot of people don't know. The origin of the fan film guidelines, a lot of people don't know this. When they filed the lawsuit against this other production, this individual wrote CBS, or had his attorney write CBS back and say, well, you can't sue us because you've never given us any clear guidelines as to what we can and can't do. Now, I'm sorry, Joe, but that's what we like to call poking the bear.
Yeah, they literally asked for it.
Exactly. And CBS replied, okay, you want guidelines? We'll give you guidelines. So they created the fan film guidelines. And then I got a call from a CBS attorney, and they said, Vic, we appreciate the quality of what you've done. We appreciate the integrity with which you have done it. We know that you had intended to finish the show, the original series. I'm sure you know about this lawsuit. How quickly can you finish your series? Now, Joe, that's a very important thing, because they didn't call me and say, stop now.
Right.
They didn't call me and say, shut it down now, or we'll sue you too.
Well, they also literally said they appreciate what you've been doing.
Yes.
So it's almost as if continues is almost canon in their eyes.
Well, they had actually called me a couple of years earlier and said, what you have done is far and away the best fan production anyone's ever done. In fact, they paid me the highest compliment of all. They said, and I quote, no other fan production could be mistaken by a casual viewer as the original series, but yours could. Meaning that if somebody was passing by a television and wasn't a big enough fan to know exactly what Shatner looked like or remember Nimoy's face or whatever, and glanced at the television, they would think they were watching original Star Trek. And so we had a great relationship with them. They would call us and say, we want you to move the disclaimer from the bottom of your website to the top of the website. And we said, absolutely. They would call us and say, we want you to change the font that you're using on your website, and don't use the original Star Trek font. And we said, absolutely. And we did it. We had a very good relationship with them. So when the fan film guidelines came down and when this started, they called me and they said, how quickly can you finish your series? And so we kicked into high gear, Joe. I mean, anybody that's ever been in fan productions, if you know anything about Star Trek fan productions, you know that it takes most of them a year or 2 or 3 to get one episode out. And even if they do, it's mediocre at best. We shot our last 4, 8, 9, 10, and 11, our last 4 episodes in less than a year.
Wow.
In that last year, we kicked into high gear and we wrote the scripts and completed 4 episodes so that we could finish the original series of Star Trek, which was the intended goal from the very beginning. Yes, we would have liked to have done more. I had a couple of script ideas that we could have done. I had 2 other ideas. We would have loved to have maybe done 15 episodes or 13 episodes, but we were only able to do 11. But at least we finished the series as we had hoped to do. So that's the story of how the fan film guidelines affected fan films. I'm sure you know there was another fan production called Star Trek New Voyages.
Yes.
And
you were in. Yeah.
Yes, true. And CBS made a deal with them and said, if you'll stop doing what you're doing, we will give you a license to have a set tour. So that's how New Voyages came to get the set tour. They stopped making and releasing episodes. And the way that CBS basically, I don't want to say rewarded them, but what they worked out with Star Trek New Voyages was that they would be allowed to purchase a license to give official set tours. And they've done very well with that. They've got a facility up in Ticonderoga, New York, that obviously I've been to up there several times in the past. But they're, blowing and going on their set tour. And what they gave Star Trek Continues was they allowed us to finish our series. So we feel a great debt of gratitude to CBS for just allowing us to finish.
I'm glad that they worked with you, because the end product, even though it was forcibly rushed, nevertheless, I couldn't tell the difference as a casual. Well, I don't want to call myself a casual fan, but as an observer, I couldn't tell the difference.
Good.
So
glad to hear it.
It came out really great. Well, one last thing. I noticed that on the Star Trek Continues website, Trek Continues, Inc. is in fact a nonprofit 501c3 charity organization. Can you speak a bit about that and what it does?
Well, back when we set that up, the purpose of it was to provide educational experience for filmmakers, right? We were shooting a television production, and every element of production was represented. And everybody that came in were volunteers. And a lot of them were people that didn't have a lot of experience. They were not necessarily professionals in their fields. Some of them were college kids, but they wanted to learn how to run a boom mic, or they wanted to learn more about sound, or they wanted to learn more about makeup, or they wanted to learn more about camera work, or lighting, or wardrobe, or building sets. So the production became an opportunity to be an educational experience as well for a lot of people. And it was under that banner that we were able to, to get a 501c3. Obviously, since we finished production, there's really nothing happening, but then we're not raising money either. Ever since we finished, we never launched another crowdfunding campaign after we finished our last episode. So we're not shooting anything else. We're not raising money. So even though there is still a 501c3, that was what it was set up for, was back when we were in production.
Well, what a great way for any aspiring person in the business to get some practical hands-on experience. What a fun way to have that acquisition on a resume.
Yeah, we were thinking the same thing, and we had a lot of great people involved. And what's funny is some of them have now gone on to work professionally. They are professional grips and lighting people and PAs and camera people in the industry.
Well, Vic, It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you about Continues, and you've been very gracious with your time. We're going on 45 minutes here. I didn't think it would take this long. Is there anything else that you would want to say to the fans out there about Star Trek Continues or about yourself in general?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, Joe, thank you again. Grazie mille. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful to the fans because, when you make something like this, you never really know how it's going to be received. Star Trek fans, we all know, Star Trek fans can be very opinionated,
mm-hmm.
and in some cases, very critical of people trying to mess with their childhood love, and I'm so incredibly grateful that the fans have enjoyed what we did, embraced what we did. Rod Roddenberry actually became a good friend. He came down to the studio and did a cameo in our 6th episode. He has multiple times made very, very kind remarks about our series, that he feels like it's canon, and that he thinks if his dad were alive today, he would consider it canon. So we're incredibly grateful and humbled by the way that it has been received. I would say to the fans, thank you so much for enjoying it. Keep watching. And more than that, if you know any fans, any Star Trek fans in your life, mention it to them. Every time I travel anywhere to do an event signing or a convention appearance, I'll often wear a Star Trek Continues t-shirt. And almost invariably, almost every time, I'll be going through TSA. And the TSA agent will go, I love Star Trek, man. I love the original Star Trek. And I'll say, boy, do I have something special for you to tell you? And or it'll be a captain on a plane, or it'll be a passenger sitting beside me, or it'll be someone walking by in the airport, or it'll be an Uber driver. Like, you never know. The Star Trek fans are everywhere. And
they are.
And so I would encourage your listeners to, let people know about it, post about it, share the good word. The best part is it's free. It was not made for money. It was not made for profit. It was made for love. It was made to pay tribute to this show that has inspired so many people. And it would mean the world to all of us if those of you out there that have enjoyed it yourselves would pass it on to others. And thank you again for embracing it as you have.
I absolutely love it. The website is StarTrekContinues.com. The full playlist of all the episodes are also available on YouTube. Just look up Star Trek Continues and you'll find it. Vic, thank you for stopping by and again for being so gracious with your time.
My pleasure, Joe. My pleasure. Take care, my friend.
Well, that was certainly a fun and insightful interview. Even I learned a few new things about one of my most favorite fan productions, one that I have followed from its inception over the years, and I am glad to be able to share with you a bit more about it from the man behind it all. Now, I want to be clear. I am fully aware of the allegations and controversy involving Vic Mignogna, and my interviewing him is in no way whatsoever an endorsement, nor is it a reproach of those very allegations. To put it simply, that is none of my business. I am simply a fan that wanted to interview another fan who created something that beautifully celebrates that which we as fans of Star Trek hold ourselves to be fans of.
And now it's time for a fan fiction replay from HoloNet Audio.
Well, when it comes to fan productions, I've certainly done my part over the years, but not in fan films. My personal contribution to fan-created media, as listeners of HoloNet Audio, the podcast feed hosting this reborn version of Dark Empire Radio, can attest, is fan audio. Now, of course, I've written dozens of short fanfiction stories over the years, mostly Star Wars, since 2013, and I've enjoyed turning those short fan-written stories into audiobook-style presentations. and I've done a few Star Trek ones. Operation Imbalance takes place immediately after the original series episode Balance of Terror, and it is a short fanfic I wrote specifically in appreciation not only for my love of Star Trek, but also for the lovely and talented fellow HoloNet audio narrator Megan Niesink, who, just like Vic Mignogna, has an acting degree and has quite a repertoire in her own right. And I was very happy when she joined us here and became a fellow narrator. I've only done a few commercials in my time, and, this. Operation Imbalance is the first of a 3-part story arc, probably the best of the 3, and it involves a character that I created specifically for Megan, and she voiced that character in this first installment while I narrated the body of the story, and got some other friends to lend their voices to the other characters in the story. You don't need to listen to all 3 stories. This first one stands up pretty well on its own, and although it's not studio produced, it is a fan production that, like just about everything else on HoloNet Audio, I am quite proud of. Operation Imbalance, a Star Trek fan audio production. This fanfiction short story takes place immediately after the events in the original series episode, Balance of Terror.
Captain's Log, Stardate 1723.4, USS Ward, NCC 1267. As a Starfleet destroyer recently retrofitted for search and rescue missions, we've been assigned to patrol and survey the remnants of Federation outposts near the Romulan neutral zone that were recently attacked by a Romulan vessel, which also engaged the USS Enterprise in combat. Our primary task is to survey the damage caused by this new plasma weapon the Romulans are using, including measuring any residual radiation and ascertaining just how much of a major threat this new weapon of theirs poses to the Federation. And of course, we will look for any potential survivors, unlikely as that may be.
After completing his log entry, the captain looked at the asteroid field ahead from the view screen of the bridge around him. His attention focused on a large asteroid remnant approximately 1 mile wide. The complex of structures within the interior of the asteroid comprising Outpost Number 8 was all but obliterated, pulverized and exposed to space, except for what appeared to be a singular annex on the southernmost end of the ruins. A very small section of Outpost 8 was apparently spared from complete destruction. The science officer, an Andorian, reported while bent over her viewer.
A passageway, various compartments, and a lavatory are still intact, sir, with a minimal atmosphere and gravity plating still operational.
Captain Lars sat back in his command chair, stroking the stubble of his short beard. A middle-aged human male, Lars was a veteran of the conflict with the Klingons. He knew full well that the Federation would be ill-equipped to handle another war with the Romulans right now. He needed to gather as much information about this new weapon as possible. The fact that part of Outpost 8 still remained was highly curious.
Could it have been deliberately left that way?
The captain asked.
Doubtful,
the science officer replied.
Although considering the apparent nature of this new weapon of mass destruction, there is a slight chance that part of the base may have been randomly spared, unintentionally by the Romulans.
Very well,
Captain Lars stated. He turned to address his new tactical officer.
Ensign Huxton, I want a platoon of Starfleet Marines to beam down there and establish a safety perimeter. Once that's established, you will then transport down and lead a small science, medical, and recovery team. Radiation levels appear to be acceptable for you to be down there for a short time. Make sure you salvage what you can, learn what you're able to from the damage down there, and bring back any survivors. You have 1 hour. Understood?
Completely, sir.
Ensign Huxton replied. A human female in her mid-20s, Huxton recently graduated from Starfleet Academy and was posted to the USS Ward right away. The ship's previous tactical officer was lost during an away mission aboard a disabled freighter that had struck a gravitic mine left over from the Klingon War. Huxton inherited the job, due in large part to the small crew complement aboard the Ward. As Ensign Huxton entered the transporter room, she inquired with the chief at the controls about the status of the Marine detachment already aboard the fractional remnant of Outpost 8. The transporter chief replied that the Marines reported 5 minutes ago that they'd secured a safety perimeter and were now standing by. However, communications were interrupted during the last few minutes, and he could no longer establish a transporter lock on their positions.
Very well,
Huxton said, as she and the rest of her team stepped onto the transporter pad. Her small team consisted of a medic, an astrophysicist, and a geologist.
4 to beam down within the established perimeter.
Huxton and her team materialized within a darkened passageway, the air stale but breathable. She looked around for the Marines that preceded her, but there were none to be seen. Just then, a loud scream followed by the unmistakable sound of phaser fire could be heard from the laboratory in the next compartment. Huxton ordered her team to stay close together as they made their way toward the sounds of violence. At the laboratory entrance, Huxton covered her mouth so as to not let out an audible gasp as she discovered the remains of one of the Marines. His uniform was similar in nature to standard Starfleet-issued uniforms, the main difference in appearance being his olive drab-colored tunic and shoulder insignias indicating his rank and unit identification. He appeared to have been badly wounded before succumbing to his injuries. Huxton pulled him from the lab entranceway to the relative safety of the corridor outside. The medic on Huxton's team examined the corpse of the unfortunate Marine and then gave her the grim news. The Marine was killed by disruptor fire. Huxton immediately pulled out her communicator and opened it, activating a preset direct channel to the communication station aboard the ward. Inside the lab nearby, additional phaser fire could be heard, mixed with indecipherable yelling.
Huxton to ward. Emergency. Please respond.
There was no response. The static that was audible sounded randomized, indicating that the frequency was being purposefully jammed by someone. Huxton ordered one of the scientists on her team to set his tricorder for emergency distress, turning it into a beacon for the ward to eventually discover whenever the jamming stops. She then ordered each person on her team, including herself, to stand back to back, forming an outward-facing circle, phasers at the ready. In this defensive formation, they slowly made their way back to the laboratory. Aboard the ward, tension was mounting. Communications with the landing party were clearly being interfered with, and even their life signs were becoming sporadic. Captain Lars was in the middle of deciding whether or not to risk sending another away team when his science officer spoke.
I'm reading phaser fire within the outpost ruins, sir, and destructor fire.
Red alert. Man battle stations, raise shields.
Captain Lars ordered. Romulans. Still here. But why? And why would they leave their people stranded in the ruins of an outpost they just destroyed? It made no sense, but one thing was for certain. With his shields up, coupled with the inability to establish communications with his own away team, they were stuck down there, on their own for now. As the group of 4 entered the outpost laboratory, each person visually scanning for any threat, Huxton spotted another body, another Marine. Founded in 2161 by Malcolm Reed immediately after the initial war with the Romulans, in which no one on either side ever saw the faces of their opponents, the Starfleet Marines, as an organization, were directly descended from the Makos, a division of the United Earth military that was dissolved the same year. These Marines were highly trained, combat-ready troops. Huxton knew that she and the rest of her team were in great peril, but unable to leave anyway, she pressed forward, searching for survivors and answers. Huxton's tricorder was nearly useless. Unable to register any life signs nearby, it also couldn't display the material composition of the asteroid remnant they were standing on, something a tricorder should be able to do with relative ease. It was being jammed, just like her communicator. Thankfully, the phasers still worked. Or did they? Huxton took both the hand phaser and the level 3 phaser rifle from the dead Marine she'd just encountered. Both were set to vaporize. Standard Starfleet procedure when entering an unknown situation was to have phasers set to stun. This left little doubt. The Marines were attacked first. Just then, a disruptor blast narrowly missed Huxton's head as she and the rest of her team ducked for cover. A single phaser blast from someone not on her team replied. Huxton called out, identifying herself. The green disruptor beam nearly missed her again, attempting to zero in on her position. The distraction gave the person behind the replying phaser blast the opportunity they needed to find their target. The silhouette of a Romulan soldier could be seen vaporizing a split second later. The person behind that phaser called back out in reply to Ensign Huxton.
Corporal Galloway, 1st Platoon. All clear. That's the last of them.
Huxton and her team revealed themselves from their partially covered positions. The corporal slowly walked toward the ensign, pointing toward a deactivated piece of equipment as he did so. There was a deceased human next to that equipment, not wearing a uniform.
Section 31,
Corporal Galloway said.
They were using this hidden laboratory near the neutral zone for something, and the Romulans wanted it badly enough to send a covert team to get it, while their mothership caused diversionary havoc throughout the system. Whatever its purpose, once this device was rendered inoperative, our tricorders started working again.
Ensign Huxton's communicator beeped, indicating that communications were restored. The ward was calling, having finally picked up the tricorder distress beacon set up by Huxton's landing party earlier. Huxton spoke as she raised her communicator to signal her reply.
We'll take this back to the ship. I'm sure Starfleet or Section 31 or whoever will want it back. Good job, all of you.
After debriefing Captain Lars about the mysterious equipment her team had recovered, Ensign Huxton tried to relax in her quarters, but could not. A coded personal message had just come through for her, and she was hesitant to play it back. Reluctantly, she did so, duty winning out over hesitation.
You did well retrieving the device and not letting it fall into Romulan hands. You will go far in our organization. We have another assignment for you when you reach your next destination.
Operation Imbalance, a Star Trek fan audio production, featured the voice talents of Megan Niesink as Tactical Officer Sarah Huxton, Jack Stewart as Captain Lars, Clarissa Mettal as the Andorian Science Officer, and Stephen Garber as Corporal Galloway. Are you a fan of Star Wars or Star Trek? Got something that you are proud of that showcases your fandom? Well, I'd like to talk to you on this podcast about it. Shoot me a line at darkempireradio@aim.com or leave a comment for this episode on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. Dark Empire Radio is a presentation of the HoloNet Audio Podcast Network. Visit us at holonetaudio.com or look for HoloNet Audio on your favorite podcast platform. For even more discussion and Wars and Trek fun, check out and join our forum at forum.holonetaudio.com. You can also listen to Dark Empire Radio directly at darkempireradio.com. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only and is not affiliated in any way with Star Wars or Star Trek or their respective property owners. All other original content on this podcast, unless otherwise indicated, belongs to HoloNet Audio. So there.